If you're just joining us, you are at the Fabian and Fabian Women's Network's Deputy Leadership Hustings. We're just making sure everybody has come into the virtual room. Right, delightful. Okay, I think we're all more or less into the virtual room. Hello, you are very, very welcome to the Fabian Society and Fabian Women's Network's Deputy Leadership Hustings. I am Councillor Dr. Sarah Hyde and I'm the Fabian Society Chair, and I will be hosting these hustings with my excellent colleagues Jo Dromey, the General Secretary of the Fabian Society, and Councillor Mariana Masters, who is the Chair of the Fabian Women's Network. So they might disappear for a moment now, but they will be back later to host a different part of the proceedings. Apologies. Right. So thank you for coming along to our members only hustings, and thank you for being part of the Fabian Society. As I'm sure you know, our members are absolutely at the heart of all that we do. Following the resignation of Angela Rayner as Deputy Leader, members of the Labour Party and the Socialist Societies, including the Fabian Society, will be electing a new Deputy Leader. It's obviously a really important role at an absolutely crucial time for our movement. I'm sure we are all aware the government's had a pretty challenging first year. Reform are riding high in the polls, and we have got a very challenging set of elections next year in Scotland, Wales, and in local government across England, including where I am a councillor. The Fabian Society exists to support debate and discussion on the left, so we were absolutely delighted to be able to host this hustings where our members get the opportunity to ask questions to the candidates. We're really grateful to the candidates for joining us. We know how busy this time is, so thank you so much. We really don't take that for granted. We really appreciate it. The hustings last till 7 p.m. and we asked you all to send in questions in advance. So for kind of smoothness and ease, we'll say the name of the member who asked the question and then pose the questions ourselves as the hosts. The candidates will have about a minute to answer each question. There'll be a gentle reminder when we're at time, and we've done it that way so we can get as many questions in as possible. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with a closing statement from each of the candidates. I'm going to ask the first batch of questions, then I will hand over to our brilliant General Secretary, Jo Dromey, and then Jo will hand over to the wonderful Mariana Masters, Chair of Fabian Women's Network. Okay, right, so I think with all of that out of the way, let us begin in earnest. The first question, we'll take it in turns, I should say. We'll alternate who we pose the questions to first in the interest of fairness. So the first question is going to go to Lucy. It's from Rosanna Jackson, who is one of the Young Fabian co-chairs at present. And the question is, what achievements from the last year are you most proud of?
Hi, well, thanks for that question. Yeah, well, for me personally, but I also think for the government as a whole, was the moment that we gave the King's speech just a few days after the election, and that was the most ambitious sort of King's speech in a long time of an incoming government, but was a really clear Labour King's speech. You know, all the work we'd done in opposition about those early bills that we were going to do, get the employment rights bill in 100 days, set up Great British Energy, bring rail and buses back into public ownership, renters' rights, ending water bosses, bonuses, and much, much more. So for me, that was obviously a piece of work that I led on in opposition, and then we just had a few days to finalise it after the election. It was a moment to be really proud of, and I thought was a really kind of collective and compelling set of policies that we were going to be implementing as new laws.
Thank you. Wonderful. And amazingly within a minute. Thank you. And Bridget, to you, what are the achievements from the last year that you're most proud of?
Great, thanks so much. And because we elected a Labour government last year in July, I have the enormous privilege of being Education Secretary, delivering on Labour's values in action. And I'm incredibly proud that we're building on the amazing legacy of Sure Start and bringing back Sure Start for a new generation, revitalised as Best Start family hubs. Alongside that, the new free breakfast clubs, the 30 hours of government-funded childcare, and new school-based nurseries that will be creating nursery places right across the country. Even in a tough fiscal environment, the money that we're spending is delivering real impact and real benefit for families. But I'm also incredibly proud that we're going to expand free school meals to 500,000 more children from next year. That will lift 100,000 children out of poverty. But I know that there is still so much we need to do on that front. And that's why I've made tackling child poverty my number one priority in this contest. It means a lot to me personally, but I know it means a lot to party members too.
Thank you so much. And thank you both for staying to time. Okay, so this question will now go first to Bridget. And this is a question from member Ian Walker. What is the one thing you would have changed since Labour have been in government? So we'll come to Bridget with that first, please.
So I think moving from opposition into government is a massive change, and I will answer the question directly, but I would just say that, you know, the very best day in opposition has no match for even the worst day in government, because in government you get to get things done, you make change, you deliver for working people. And all of the things I've just talked about there would not have happened if we hadn't secured a Labour government back last year. You know, we've had ups and downs. It's hard being in government. You've got to make choices. And I'd be the first to admit that we've made mistakes along the way. I think especially where it comes to winter fuel allowance and welfare reform, those were areas where we know that there were mistakes and problems. I think the key test when you make mistakes is whether you're able to learn from them, whether you take that forward. But I do think, however, that if we don't celebrate and shout about the amazing successes and what we are doing in government, no one else is going to do that for us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then to Lucy, what is the one thing you would have changed since Labour have been in government, please?
Well, look, I think we have done some great things, but people are not hearing about those because of some of the mistakes that we've made, but also because I don't think we've been able to pull all those threads together in a much more compelling story about the purpose of this Labour government and what our key driving agenda is. And I think that's why, in addition to the mistake on winter fuel, which is one we've admitted, that's why we've put it right. The mistakes on pursuing cuts to personal independent payments, which were had too many holes in and weren't the right approach. But they together, as well as being the wrong things to do, just gave a sense that we had different values to the ones that we have, because we were looking to take money away from some of the poorest in our society. And that's not what a Labour government's purpose should be. So we do have to learn from those mistakes and be now really clear going forward whose side we are on and in whose interests we are governing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. This is quite a quick fire round. Thank you so much for sticking to time. So we're on to our third question already. And we're going to come to Lucy first with this one. And it is from a wonderful councillor in the Fabian Women's Network group, Kamal Preet Kaur. How will you support Labour's councillors in the May local elections, Lucy?
Well, I want to make this a real priority from day one. You know, we are heading into some big and difficult elections. We've seen the fracturing of the country and therefore the electorate as well. Yes, we are losing votes and some seats to reform, but we're losing many seats and support in by-elections to the other side as well. And we've got to rebuild that voter coalition incredibly quickly, because I won't accept losing any councillor come next May. I was in Doncaster just this weekend where they lost nearly all their councillors in May, and they're furious because it was no fault of their own that they did that, and they're now having to live with a reform council, and I don't want that for any of our communities come next May. So we've got to get the politics right. That's really important, and we've got to get the organisation right, that we can support our councillors right across the country, because we've got some thousands of councillors up for election next May.
Yeah, thank you. And Bridget, same question to you about how will you support Labour's councillors in the May local elections?
Yeah, the elections we've got coming up in May are crucial. We've obviously got council elections right across England alongside essential elections in Scotland and Wales. Our councillors do an amazing job, kind of on the front line, supporting their communities and really being the voice and reach in so many parts of the country. I'm out there every week campaigning. I will have met many of you on the doors in the run-up to the general election and many years before in opposition. I've campaigned the length and breadth of the country. I do that all the time, week in, week out, as Education Secretary. And that means that alongside the politics of what I do, why it's, you know, the right policy to bring forward free school meals, the new school-based nursery, the new free breakfast club. That's also about giving our councillors messages that they can put on leaflets to demonstrate the difference that a Labour government is making directly in their community. And I do think tangible, practical change, especially around the cost of living, will be critical in seeing off reform as well as remaining true to our values.
Thank you. Thank you so much. While we're on the topic of next year's elections, I'd like to invite both candidates to say a bit more about the strategy for winning in Scotland and retaining the Welsh Labour government in Wales. So to Bridget first. Thank you.
I've got a long track record in campaigning in Scotland before the referendum, during the referendum, and also in the general election. So I know the difference it will make to have a Scottish Labour government working together with a Labour government in Westminster. And we've got to do everything we possibly can to make sure that Annas is the next First Minister in Scotland. We need to hold the Nationalists to account for their record, the very, very wide attainment gap that we see, the big cuts that they're delivering to college funding at the moment, and the fact that the childcare offer in Scotland is far less supportive to parents than the offer that we have in England. That does demonstrate the difference that Labour is making at a national level at Westminster. And I think a Labour government in Scotland and a Labour government in Westminster working together can really get things done. But we've got to hold the Nationalists to account and make a strong case for working together. In Wales, we've got a Welsh Labour Party that's been in government for many years. I've been able to draw on much of that. A long time ago, that breakfast clubs were rolled out in Wales. But I think the key test will be how we demonstrate that we're working together to deliver for Wales through a Welsh Labour government alongside a Labour government in Westminster. And I'd just say that coal tip remediation was one of the practical policies I'd point to. That was something I discussed a lot with colleagues in Wales in the run up to the election, and now we're delivering on that.
Okay, thank you. And Lucy, the same question to you, winning in Scotland and holding Wales. Thank you.
Well, I think your question is the right one, which is what's the political strategy? Because we've got to rebuild that voter coalition, because the electoral challenge we face in Scotland and Wales is not the same one that we face everywhere else. But we need to have a political strategy that reunites that full voter coalition, because out-reforming reform is not the answer. We are just losing more votes the other way. And if you take Wales, for example, yes, reform are on the rise there, but it's because we're losing a lot of more support to Plaid Cymru on our left, and that's letting reform in through the middle. So I've done a huge amount of work in the past, and my seat itself is half red wall, half kind of urban, about how we rebuild that voter coalition. And it starts with us seizing back the political megaphone in this country and setting the agenda, setting the terms of the debate, not being tactical and tacking one way and tacking the other, but having a clear strategy, a strategic approach that is principled. That means we can reunite the voter coalition that will help us in Scotland and Wales and in London and right across all those council elections next year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And now the next question, it's got a partner question, but this is standard. You have a minute. I'm going to come to Lucy first, and it's from our member Daz Trail. How formidable do you perceive the opposition to Labour to be from the left, specifically the Greens, under the leadership of Polanski?
Well, look, I mean, you've only it's a fact. I mean, it's not a kind of disloyal or dissenting thing to say. It's a fact that if you look at the polls today, the Greens are coming up in the polls, and they're getting close to Labour's vote share, as well as other parties, and Reform are ahead of us in the polls, because we have fractured support to all sides. And I think we've just got to be really clear about that with ourselves, that this is not, we cannot just afford to try and ape and out-reform reform. We really do have to, not just for electoral purposes, but for the future of our democracy purposes, reunite the voter coalition, but more importantly, reunite the country. And for me, that starts with a really strong story about fairness in the economy. People don't think this economy works for them. Trickle-down economics does not work for people. And we've got to tell a much stronger story about how we are rewiring the country and changing the nature of the economy and how it's formed, so that we can make everybody feel better off, and they've got a stake in this economy and a stake in this country.
Thank you. Bridget, the same questions to you about the Greens under Polanski.
We've got to be as tough in taking on the Greens as we have to be in taking on reform. I do think there is overlap. I mean, the cost of living is a huge challenge that voters right across the country are experiencing at the moment. So practical, tangible change like the national minimum wage are crucial. But we've also got to expose the Greens for their record and for who they are. So, I was out campaigning earlier this week in Oxford, where what I heard from local members was that whilst the Greens might in theory say that they want more social housing, every time the city council tries to build any social housing, the Greens are out there complaining about it. And that's what we see where it comes to clean energy as well, where they say they want the transition to net zero, but then they're opposed to the practical steps to make it happen. So holding them to account for how they behave, how that's at variance with what they say nationally, but also a strong positive Labour message about the change we're delivering. And to give one example, I think the reintroduction of new targeted maintenance grants for disadvantaged students at college and university will be a really strong policy that will appeal to particularly younger voters thinking about voting for parties like the Greens.
Thank you so much. And it's got a partner question from Ellie Collard, but a slightly different twist. If elected as deputy leader of the Labour Party, how do you plan to deal with Reform UK and win the messaging war? So I think that's the slight difference there. We'll come to Bridget first, this idea of how do we win the messaging war? Bridget.
Yeah, we've got to be clear about taking on reform on our own terms, about being consistent with our values, not aping reform in our language, but being clear about who we are as Labour. And actually, I think our values align with the values of the British people, which is that we are an open, outward, compassionate nation where we do have considerable strength in the diversity we see in our country, and we need to reclaim that sense of patriotism and pride in who we are from reform. They don't own it. We own the flag of our nation just as much as anybody else, and we've got to be proud to make that case. But I do think it will come down to people feeling that the country is moving in the right direction and that positive change is happening in their community. For every voter that raises immigration with me, 5 will raise the difficulties they face in accessing an NHS dentist or wanting more police on the street or the need to build more social housing. So those are the kinds of areas that reform voters are concerned about, where we've got a strong story to tell, but where we need to do more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Lucy, how do we win the messaging war?
Well, I wrote an article about this in The Guardian just before conference if people want to have a read of it. And not to repeat myself, but it is about seizing back the agenda in this country, because Nigel Farage and his ilk want us all to believe that all the problems the country faces are down to immigration and immigrants, something we fundamentally and profoundly reject. Yes, we need to tackle and have control of our borders. That's a prerequisite of any government. But the change that people keep voting for and the change that we're offering is a fundamental change to the way the country and the economy is working. And let's be honest, Nigel Farage, he's the love child of Margaret Thatcher and Enoch Powell. He's a Thatcherite. He believes completely in deregulation and trickle-down economics. That is not going to change the lives of all the people that we represent one jot. And we believe in a very different version of the economy, which we are beginning to rewire through the Employment Rights Bill, the Renters' Rights Bill, and all of these measures. But we need to regain the agenda and tell that really strong story through what we're doing, so that reform don't set the agenda instead and we just follow.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And the last question from my section will come to Lucy first, from Mike Parker. If you were asked in a sentence to describe what you believe the Labour Party stands for, what would you say?
Well, for me, the Labour Party is about equal opportunity for all, no matter where you come from, no matter your background or what your start in life is. And that means having a fairer country and a fairer opportunity for people. And that's what I want to see the Labour government shouting about. And that's why I've called for some of the things that I've called for in this campaign. But I really want us to have a sense of purpose and a sense of values. And I think that's when we are at our best and at our boldest.
Wonderful. And Bridget, in a sentence, how would you describe what you believe the Labour Party stands for?
The Labour Party is the greatest vehicle for social justice this country has ever seen. And I believe that the Labour Party is about the socialism of freedom. So giving people the freedom to choose their path and their calling, and making sure that background doesn't determine destiny.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The hustings continues, but what an honour to have you both here and to speak with you both. I so appreciate your time, and I'm sure the members do too. I'll hand over to Joe for the next segment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So I'm going to start with some questions about the role itself and how you would approach the role. And the first question will be for you, Bridget, and it's from Artin Astavar. So what would be your number one priority in your first year as deputy leader?
I could talk about the process and I will come back to that, but my number one priority is tackling child poverty, and I want us to make real progress as a party. We've already started that. The changes that I've set out around free school meals will lift 100,000 children out of poverty, but we need to go into the next election having significantly brought those numbers down, because that will be a key test of who we are as a party and our moral mission in order to achieve that. On a more process point, we've got critical elections coming up next May. We need to be in the best possible shape to fight them. I'll take that work forward as the campaigner-in-chief, but I'll also be a voice around the cabinet table, able to get things done for members, building on the amazing work of Angela Rayner, who had a big job in government, but was also an amazing deputy leader. That's the model that I see for the role. But I'll also be there to champion more of what members want to see, with a mandate to go further on key areas like child poverty.
Thanks, Bridget. And to you, Lucy, what would be your number one priority in your first year as deputy leader?
Well, I think the first thing for everyone to remember is this is a party role. It's not a government role. We're not electing the Deputy Prime Minister. That's somebody else. This is a party role at a time of government, and it's how we can best work with the government to make sure we've got the politics right, we've got the culture right, and we've got the organisation right. And I will prioritise all of those things. And I think we get the politics right and we get some of the culture right when we listen to broader voices, when we're connected to our community through our great movement, which is our strength. And we have those broad voices contributing to the debate. And when we have debate, I mean, that's what the Fabians are famous for. When we have debate, which is not dissent, it's not disunity, it's debate about how we can be a better version of ourselves. So I will judge that on whether we are successful in the elections next May, whether members are feeling motivated and valued and respected, and whether we're getting more of the politics right and we've got less of the bad culture that we've got, unfortunately, in some aspects of the party at the moment.
Thanks, Lucy. And just building on that last point you had, that we've got a question here from Helen Berenson. And Helen asked, how will you enable all views to be heard without creating damaging factions? And I'll put that to you first, if that's okay, Lucy. So how will you ensure all views can be heard without creating damaging factions?
Well, anyone who's ever worked with me knows I am a consensual person. I am somebody who's always worked across different factions in service of making our party the best version of itself and successful. And I've always worked like that. Indeed, as the leader of the House of Commons for the last 15 months around the cabinet table, I had to get consensus on things in order to make them happen. And I had a political role in doing that. And I think it's absolutely critical that we change the culture, because when you have, I always think that unity of purpose, which is what we're talking about here. Unity of purpose comes not from command and control or browbeating people and telling people that my way is the best way. Unity of purpose comes from us all debating, discussing and agreeing ourselves that unity of purpose, and then everybody's got a stake in that. And that's the kind of culture that I want to see. And I'm disappointed that that's not the culture we've seen in the party recently, because I think when you've got groupthink at the top and narrower voices, that's when mistakes are made.
Thanks, Lucy. And to you then, Bridget, how will you enable all views to be heard without creating damaging factions?
Yeah, I'm a pragmatic person and will work right across the party and the movement. That's been my track record, both in opposition and government. And I think those who work with me would know that I seek to get things done, find solutions, and make sure that people are involved in discussion and decision making. So there are also some practical changes I think we need to make as a party to better involve members in decision making. So I think there are changes that we could make to the National Policy Forum to give a stronger voice for members and for trade unions, because it's been opened up in terms of policy discussion to non-affiliates, which I think risks crowding out members' voices. I also want more routes for Labour members who are in constituencies without a Labour MP to be involved. I think we need more frontbench engagement in particular, including through online forums. We did quite a lot of it during the pandemic. It's rather fallen away, and I think we're missing a trick and should be doing more to engage members in discussion, including with members of the government, on a much more regular basis through online forums. And that's something I'd want to take forward as Deputy Leader.
Perfectly timed. Thank you very much, Bridget. So I'll come back to you on this one now, Bridget. So you had just mentioned engaging with unions through the MPF. We've got a question from Jackie Taylor, which was more general. So how would you intend to foster the party's relationships with our union partners?
I've got a strong track record both in opposition and in government of working with our trade unions. It's why I was involved in that National Policy Forum process, and why, to give one example, I'm so proud that we committed to bringing back the school support staff negotiating body, something that we're delivering in government that will make a real difference to support staff across our country. And I'm really proud to be working with our affiliated trade unions, including the GMB and Unison on that. I think it speaks to why I've secured such broad support from our big affiliated trade unions, because they worked with me. They know that I'm someone who will get things done together with them to make sure that the voices of our reps in our workplaces and our trade union members across the country are heard in everything that we do. It's also why in the Department for Education, I've introduced Improving Education Together, which is about how we make sure the voices of our trade unions and the members that they represent are heard in policy making and development right at the heart of government.
Thanks very much, Bridget. Lucy, to you, how would you foster the party's relationship with our union partners?
Well, it's really important that we do, because our movement is our strength. You know, our links with our trade union, our historic links with the trade union movement, are what gives us access and reach into workplaces and communities right around the country. And I've always worked very closely with the trade unions, both locally and nationally, on a number of issues, as we all have. And I know that the big issue that for a lot of the trade unions face at the moment in relation to Labour is that a lot of their members are struggling to relate to the Labour government, and many of them are thinking themselves of voting reform or for other parties, even though they're political levy payers. So I know from the work that I've done that the trade unions really want to work much more closely with Labour through TULO and other mechanisms to make sure that we're really addressing the priorities of their members. And that is things like the Employment Rights Bill, which is at its later stages. And I work very closely with Angela bringing that in. But it's also the next stage of that, tackling rogue self-employment and the next stages. And at the moment, there's no one really championing those issues at the top of the party, and I will do that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lucy. In fact, there's an upcoming Fabian Society research project on that very topic. So the next question will go to you again, Lucy. So Robert Thompson has said that his local branch has had a sharp fall in membership in the last year. How would each candidate address the real need to solidify our activist base? So over to you, Lucy.
Well, I don't think it's a good, some people seem to think it's a good thing that people are leaving the Labour Party. I completely disagree with that. We want people to join the Labour Party. We want to keep them in the Labour Party. And I know from my own constituency, you know, how many people we've seen leave in recent months. And we shouldn't be here 15 months into a big Labour government with that huge mandate at the last election. And that's about making our members feel involved, enthused, valued, respected, and proud of the Labour government, and that they've got that hope that Labour, which is what we all join the Labour Party because what we believe, that the Labour Party can be that progressive force for good, transforming our country for the better and the lives of ordinary working people. So we need to really get back to it, a clear sense of purpose and agenda in what we're doing every day, so that people can get those feelings back.
Thank you. And over to you, Bridget. How would you address the real need to solidify our activist space?
Yeah, that is incredibly important. And I want members to feel proud of this government and proud to go out knocking on doors, delivering leaflets and shouting about the achievements that we have delivered together, because we have achieved an awful lot. none of which would have happened under a Conservative or a Reform government. But I do recognise that members want to be more involved in decision making, more involved in policy discussion. And as I've set out just earlier in my answer, some practical ways that we can make that happen so members have more of a say, because whilst we know it's essential to get out there and deliver a Labour victory through the electioneering that we do, we also join the Labour Party because we care passionately about Labour politics, and we care passionately about delivering change in our country. So more opportunities for members to do that, but particularly for some of our younger members, so to make sure that the party is a really welcoming and open environment for young people getting involved.
Fantastic, thank you. My final three questions are on some key policy areas which members have raised with us. So Carl Wright asked, 10 years after Brexit and with a new geopolitical order, should we aim at EU membership again? And I'll put that to you first, Bridget.
I believe we need a better deal with the EU, which is what we're securing. I also believe in the significance and the importance of a youth mobility scheme, so to give our young people here in Britain the chance to work and study abroad. I've always been a staunch pro-European. It's why, in the Brexit years, even in a seat where many people had voted to leave, I stood up and campaigned for what I believed was essential in terms of a people's vote. That wasn't easy, but I felt it was the right thing to do. And I think that demonstrates to members that I will always seek to do what I believe to be right, even sometimes where it isn't necessarily always the most popular choice. But our country did vote to leave. We didn't secure that referendum that I campaigned for over many years. And I do believe we need to get a better deal. We are securing that better deal, but there is still further progress that we can make in terms of joint working with our European partners, including through a youth mobility scheme.
Thanks, Bridget. To you, Lucy, should we be aiming for EU membership again in the future?
Well, look, I mean, like most members, I'm sure on this call, I supported us staying in the European Union and the campaign to remain. But we all have to accept that we lost that referendum. The country voted to leave. What then followed was the worst of all worlds, because it was a terrible Brexit deal that the previous government, Tory government, put together. I campaigned during that time for what we called Common Market 2.0, so a kind of softer Brexit, if you like, that maintains the benefits, but that followed through on the referendum. We are now getting this better deal, and we want to see that reset really coming through. That's absolutely critical. But I think what we've got to show the electorate, much of the electorate, which is very disillusioned with mainstream politics at all, and it's the same people who voted for change with Brexit. They then voted for change with Boris Johnson. They voted for change with us. I think the most important thing is that we deliver that change to their everyday lives. That's the test for me right now.
Thanks very much, Lucy. So I'll put this next question to you, Lucy, which is about welfare reform. So how would you, as Deputy Leader, work with the Cabinet and the PLP on future plans for welfare reform? And how would you ensure that those affected and representative organisations are effectively consulted?
Well, look, I think the first thing to say is, I made my views known previously, that I thought we were rushing those welfare reforms, that those welfare reforms were being rushed for the need for cuts, and that we were therefore targeting the wrong people, and it wasn't the kind of welfare reform we could all support, because we couldn't explain who was going to have their personal independence payment cut and who wasn't. And that was they were fundamental holes in it. And it became pretty clear to me as the leader of the House quite early on that we weren't going to also get that piece of legislation as it was initially drafted through the House of Commons, which is why I kind of, yes, in many ways did act as a shop steward of the backbenchers, why so many of them are supporting me now. And I made those views clear to the government, and we changed course, because we do need to reform welfare. There's no question about that. But as with these other policy areas that are difficult, we've got to take people with us. We've got to have a proper process, a big national conversation about how we need to change it, and take people with us so that we get the right outcomes.
Over to you, Bridget. How would you work with the Cabinet and the PLP on any future plans for welfare reform, and how would you involve those affected and representative organisations?
I would just speak briefly about the approach I'm taking on reform to the SEND system, because this is also a very complex and sensitive area where we know that change is needed because the system isn't working, but where our MPs, our party members, campaigners, charities and families need to be involved in that conversation about the direction, which is what I've been leading over many, many months. So to make sure that we're engaging with the widest range of people ahead of setting out any changes. So that's the approach I take. And where it comes to welfare reform, I will make sure that the views of members are heard at the cabinet table. So I'll be in the room when those decisions are being discussed, able to push for what is needed. I would say that it is important that we deliver a fairer social security system, one that supports people who can work to work with the right level of support. I've heard from many young people, many disabled people, that they want those opportunities and they aren't currently there. So that has to happen. But we do need to make sure we've got a security net for those who are not able to work. And that's the balance that we need to strike.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Bridget, and thank you to Lucy. So I'm now going to hand over to Councillor Mariana Masters, who is the chair of the Fabian Women's Network, who will ask the final group of questions. So over to you, Mariana.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. And good evening, ladies. From on behalf of the Fabian Women's Network, we just want to thank you and say that you've both shown such resilience by putting yourselves forward. The press isn't always women friendly, so keep speaking up and you're making, both of you, a real difference. With that said, my first question to Lucy. Many of us from ethnic minority communities feel increasingly concerned by the rise in right-wing rhetoric. As deputy leader, how would you make Labour a party where everyone feels they truly belong?
Well, thank you. That's a really good question. And I recognise exactly what you say. And I represent a diverse constituency myself, and I've talked to many different groups across the party in recent weeks. We do have to call it out. We have to stand firm on our values, and there's no question about that. We also have to call it out when we see others discussing it elsewhere. I want to support our members, our councillors, much more than we do currently in navigating some of these perils of public life, because I know this is a real challenge for people standing or thinking about standing for council or who are councillors as well. So that's one thing that I want us to do much better as a party. And in policy terms as well, I want us to take a much stronger stance actually than we have done hitherto when it comes to the social media issues, and taking on some of the algorithms and the big tech who let some of this hate and division spread wildly on their platforms.
Thank you. And Bridget, yes, as deputy leader, how would you help make Labour a party where everyone feels they truly belong?
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredibly important. And I've heard also from too many of our councillors in particular, that, and members too, that they faced unacceptable online abuse, and we have to absolutely deal with that. But I also want the Labour Party to be a welcoming place for everyone to make a contribution. And I think there is more that we need to do to support, particularly our councillors, those who put themselves forward for public office and often face unacceptable abuse. In government, I've been delivering change that will make a really big difference, whether that's through ethnic minority pay gap reporting, a big step forward that we'll be taking, working with Seema Malhotra to understand the needs of our diverse communities. We do have to be really proud of the diversity of our country. It's what makes us such a brilliant place to be. We ought to be proud of it. And I'm so proud that my family came to this country, built their homes and contributed to our NHS, and we need to call out Farage and the devastating policies that they're suggesting, particularly around indefinite leave to remain, and how that would pull away how that would see people ripped from their communities, people who are our friends and neighbours.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question is from Dr. Liz Hines, and she asks, what would you do to ensure women's concerns are central to policy making in the Labour Party? And I'd ask that of Bridget, please.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure we've got opportunities for spaces for women to discuss issues that matter to us most. I come from a constituency where we had a very long and proud tradition of women's sections where women members organised, got together and discussed issues that mattered to them. Had those processes not happened, had we not secured more women in Parliament, then we wouldn't have seen the action that came, particularly post 97, on childcare as a serious issue for government, around domestic violence, around sexual violence. And those are the areas where we need to do more as a party. But we need to provide spaces where women's voices can be heard. We've all been in those meetings, all been in those rooms when people are asked to contribute and a sea of male hands go up, and we don't always have environments that allow women to play their full part. So I think the ability of women to self-organise, to run our own events, to make a contribution, especially through the amazing work that the Fabian Women's Network have been doing around mentoring. I think we need to see more of that in the party overall.
Thank you. And to you, Lucy, what would you do to ensure that women's concerns are central to policy making in the Labour Party?
Well, I think this gets to the sort of central crux of what I'm standing about, which is making sure that our broad voices are heard right across government, right across the party, and being the deputy leader full time, working right across all the different policy areas. I can make sure that the voices of our members, of our movement, and of our women members, are absolutely part of that conversation. And that is cultural, it is structural, as well as it being political. And we need to look at each of those areas. I'm really proud that there's two strong women standing in this particular contest. I'm the first Labour woman to represent Manchester. I'm still the only Labour woman to represent a seat in Manchester. We've got 6 MPs here, and that's not good enough. So representation is really important, but voice and making sure we've got the right kind of structures that enable women in particular, because we face different reasons why we're not getting involved, that women in particular, their voice is heard right through the party, and you will have a key champion at the top in me.
Brilliant. Now we have a question from our co-vice chair of the Fabian Women's Network, Kelly Green. And she says, why do you think we've had 2 leaders called Keir before we've had a female leader? And I'd like to go to Lucy, please.
Well, it's about time we did have a woman leader when there's next a vacancy. And, I'm sure we can all agree about that. But I've got to be honest with you. I think, it's actually getting harder, not easier, for women to step forward in public life. And the truth is, we face different challenges today than maybe we did a couple of decades ago. It's less now about juggling family life, although that is still an issue. And, I've done a huge amount of work as the leader of the House to make Parliament much more family friendly. And I'm really proud of the work that I've done on that. But we also face, I think women face a disproportionate amount of abuse and the spotlight. I mean, look at what happened to Angela, an honest mistake, and the level of scrutiny and accountability on her that I don't think would have been on somebody else. And it was one of the things that crossed my mind in putting myself forward for this job. Do I want my family and myself to be put under the spotlight and face all that abuse that we do face? And it is a challenge, and we've got to think about how we're behaving. And some of the things that have been said about me in this campaign by Bridget and her team are frankly appalling as well. So I think we should call those out when that happens as well.
Bridget, over to you. Why do you think we've had 2 leaders called Keir before we've had a female leader?
Well, I very much hope one day we will have a female leader, and I was really proud back in 2015 to nominate Yvette Cooper, who's now our amazing Foreign Secretary, in that role. Sadly, that wasn't to be, but I've always, wanted to support women to get involved in the party and to encourage more women to come through. But my focus as Minister for Women and Equalities is how we deliver for the millions of women out there in our country who face domestic and sexual violence, who face intimidation and harassment in their homes, on their streets, the need to improve maternity services, the frankly shocking maternity discrimination that many women face, and the need to take action around the gender pay gap. So it's right that we think about what we do as a party, but we also have to look outwards to the country as well. And I'm afraid I am going to have to just return to Lucy's final point there. I would just say that in any contest, members have a choice, and it is right that we have a discussion about what that choice involves. That's the same in any election I've ever fought, and I make no apology for the fact that we do present different visions for how we see this role being carried out.
I have a next question from another Fabian Women's Network member, Cecilia Jamaraska. How can governments be more joined up in protecting women from the rise of misogyny, both on and offline? And I'm going to Bridget first, please.
So we have to take action where it presents offline, and how that will often present is through gender-based violence that women experience both here and across the world, whether that's through domestic violence, sexual abuse, or on-street harassment and intimidation. And I'm working with colleagues across government on taking action on those issues. But alongside it, we have to do much more around prevention. And that's why I'm proud that we've published revised guidance for schools in terms of RSHE, so that we provide our young people with a much clearer understanding of what constitutes healthy relationships, how they understand that sometimes what they will see online is not right, it's not how things should be, and how we challenge some of those misconceptions. But I think it's also really important that for our boys and our young men, we provide good, strong role models who can challenge some of the online hatred that we see from people like Andrew Tate. And there are some great examples around mentoring schemes that can provide a really strong basis. I would also just add we need more men into traditionally female roles like early years and primary school teaching, and that's something I'm working on as well.
And the same question to Lucy, please. How do you think government could be more joined up in protecting women from the rising tide of misogyny, both on and offline?
Well, there really is a rising tide of misogyny, especially online, but it then goes into the offline space as well. And we see the real awful impacts of that in domestic violence, in the abuse that people get, in the harassment. And we've seen real movements against that as well in recent years as well, the Me Too movement and all that attention that brought on it. I'm really pleased that Jess Phillips, I call one of my friends who's supporting me as well in this campaign. You know, she's done more than most in really championing these issues. But we do have to join things up better, as you say, and it's not just in government and Whitehall, but it's what can be done in places as well. And there's some fantastic work being done by mayors and police and crime commissioners and others around the country. And I think we do need to join these things up much more strongly than we have done, because we have to tackle this huge rise in misogyny.
Brilliant. Those are the questions from the Fabian Women's Network. And again, thank you very much for your time. It's Sunday and everyone has been working so hard. So we wish you well, both of you. Thank you. I'm now handing over, I think, to Joe.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mariana. So we're approaching the end of the hustings, and we're going to give each candidate the chance to make a closing statement. We flipped a coin just before we started, and Bridget Phillipson will be going first. So each candidate will have 2 minutes to make their closing remarks. So over to you, Bridget.
Great, thanks very much. Last year, we came together to secure a Labour government after 14 long years, and the years ahead are a golden opportunity to change our country, to change every community, and to make that change for good. So we can't risk it and we can't waste it. We face the spectre of Nigel Farage with his dangerous nationalism and immoral policies. Of course, it's harder when we're in government, but we should never give up. We need to turn this government story around, not turn in on each other. So I tell you today that change is on the ballot at this election. The choice is simple: what kind of change that you want to see. You can choose to push the government to be bolder, to go further and to do more with me as your voice at the cabinet table. Or you can risk the division that we will see that potentially puts us back on the path to opposition. I want to put Labour's, I'm sorry, Lucy, if you don't like that, but there's no need to interrupt. I want to put Labour's heart and soul back into government, continuing the legacy of John Prescott, Harriet Harman and Angela Rayner. And I'm proud of what I've delivered as Education Secretary. Now I'm seeking a mandate to do more. With a seat at the cabinet table, I'll be your voice at the heart of government to get things done, tackling the scourge of child poverty and making sure we deliver the Employment Rights Bill in full. I know the difference that Labour councils and Labour governments make. They took me from a council street in the northeast right to the cabinet table. But if we don't come together, we'll not build the better country that we all want to see. We know we've got crucial elections in Scotland, Wales and across England next May, and we can't afford to look inwards. The stakes are simply too high. So I'm asking you to back me, as so many MPs have, as so many trade unions have, to be your voice in cabinet, to deliver change, to beat reform, and to secure the second-term Labour government that we all want to see.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Bridget. So finally, we'll go over to Lucy Powell for your closing statement. Over to you, Lucy.
Thanks. Well, look, we've done some great things and we won that big election we're all so proud of. But I think we all have to accept that things aren't going as great as they should be. And there's no sugarcoating that. And that's not disloyal or dissenting. It's facing up to the facts and the reality. And we need to do better. The country needs us to do better. The stakes are now really high for us as well. And we do need to change the way we're operating. There is huge fragmentation and division in our democracy, and that's why the stakes are so high. And for me, it's about politics, it's about culture, and it's about our operation and how we do things. And there is a chance now for this role to be done differently, and I think it's really needed, particularly at this point in time. It's a party role, not a government role. It's not the Deputy Prime Minister. I will work alongside the government in service of making this government more successful, but outside some of the constraints of government, focusing on the politics and the party. And I think there's a real virtue to this now. On culture, I think it's absolutely vital that broader voices that are connected to our communities and our workplaces are heard, because when we have a narrower set of people, groupthink sets in, and that's where wrong turns happen. And unity of purpose is not command and control. It's about when we all share that purpose together. And debate and discussion is not dissent. It is our strength. And I do really object to how people have described me as some kind of divisive character, because I'm absolutely not. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm not. And my candidacy is about making the party better and having those broad voices heard. And finally, it's about getting some of the politics right, because the country is fracturing. This is way bigger than the rest of us, and we need to reclaim the agenda and get the politics right. And that's what I will do.
Very good timing. Thank you very much, Lucy. So that's all that we have for the Hustings today. So I wanted to just close by saying a huge thank you both to Lucy Powell MP and to Bridget Phillipson MP for taking part in the Hustings this evening. I know there's been a lot of requests for them, and so we were really grateful for you giving Fabian Society members a chance to put their questions to you. And I also wanted to recognise, as Mariana said, it's not an easy thing to do, putting yourself forward for a role like this, and it takes courage and guts. And I'm sure all of our members will be really grateful to both of you for putting yourself forward. I wanted to remind everyone, all members, that they have a vote. So if you're a Labour Party member, obviously you've got a vote in the contest, but also as a member of the Fabian Society, you'll have a vote in this contest. So polls opened on the 8th, and I believe, is it the 23rd that polls closed?
Yeah.
So please make sure you use your vote by the 23rd of October. I also wanted to thank our fantastic co-chairs, Sarah Hyde, who's the chair of the Fabian Society, and Mariana Masters, the chair of the Fabian Women's Network. And I also wanted to thank Rory O'Brien, our External Affairs Director, who's set up the Hustings and made sure it's run all very smoothly. But most of all, I also want to say a big thank you to all of our members. So the Fabian Society is not just a think tank, but a membership organisation. And our members make everything that we do possible. So thank you very much for your membership, and thank you for joining today. For members who are in a position to give more to the Society, we've got 3 tiers of membership plus donation, and we'll circulate some information on that after the event. And we're always really keen for your suggestions for things that we should be doing through our research, through our editorial work, or for events. So any suggestions for things that you think we should be doing as the Fabian Society in the coming months, we'd be really grateful for those suggestions. So I just wanted to end by again thanking Lucy and Bridget for taking part in the hustings this evening. We're really, really grateful, and good luck with the rest of the contest.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.